like, what are the opportunities on PulseX? Like, we have the farms, we have LP providing. Like, can we just do like just to introduce people who may not know like how to navigate this so well? Like, what are the opportunities on this platform?
Yeah, I can do that. So PulseX is just a decentralized exchange where you can go to swap your tokens, and the traditional model for how you can make money on that is by providing liquidity, which means when people do their trading, you're giving your coins for other people to trade. Typically, you get paid a fee with that, but as of right now, the PulseX fees all are going to the PulseX buy and burn. They're not going to the liquidity providers. So that's kind of unfortunate because people were like providing a service but not getting paid for that service. I mean, it'll be fixed, but as of now, the only income that you're making on PulseX is from the incentive token farms. But yeah, that's essentially what it is. It's a place to go swap your coins if you want to make fees or make some passive income with two coins that you don't care which one you hold more of long term. You can provide them in a pool, earn some passive income on that, and then yeah, use that income whatever you want, compound or sell or buy some more stuff. Doesn't really matter. The incentive pools, a lot of V2 exchanges like PulseX, they have certain pools that they quote unquote incentivize. And that means that they give an extra token to people who provide liquidity in those pools, in addition to the underlying fees that are generated from swaps. And the reason typically exchanges want to do that is to highlight a specific coin, or really in the PulseX case is to provide stable coin / ETH BTC liquidity so that there's some like underlying monetary backing to all of the coins that we have. So that's to get people to provide the thing that have quote unquote value, or that gives value to all of our tokens, but also to incentivize liquidity bonding so that as the prices of these coins moves, they'll move in tandem together, both in the upside and the downside. And there's a variety of different benefits for that and considerations for that. But that's essentially the long and short of what a DEX is, what the incentives are, and like what an incentivization pool is.
And I want to talk about the risk too, because I think a lot of people have stayed away from LP for a while now, but just because they are scared or don't understand impermanent loss or can't calculate the risk appropriately. So the risk for pairs, is it like, so like a couple things, like what do you think about when you're thinking about which pairs to go in? Like, will you worry about one of the coins getting rugged, for example? Is that like a risk that's factored in? Maybe that means higher APR, and we see that reflected as well. Am I going to have more than one coin than another, which equals less gains, but doesn't mean the position goes to zero? Like, that's a nuance as well. Like, what are the things that you look for in these positions, and how do you factor that into actually participating or not? Because a lot of people think they're just sitting on the sidelines just because they don't know, and there's quite a bit of APR going around that seems like you can rationalize the risk if you just think about it.
Yeah. So I'll answer that by starting kind of like what impermanent loss is, and a good way to start on that is like to talk about what you're actually doing when you're providing liquidity and like how price is derived. So price is derived simply by a function of the ratio of the two coins together in the liquidity pool. So if there's one HEX token and one USDC token in a liquidity pool, the ratio is 1-to-1 and HEX is $1. Now, let's say there are 5 HEX tokens and 5 USDC coins. Well, it's still back 1-to-1, so it's $1. Now, say you're the person who's providing the liquidity. So you're providing the 5 HEX coins and the 5 USDC coins. Well, you're allowing other people to trade them. So if somebody wants, they can go in and put a USDC coin in and take out a HEX coin. So now all of a sudden, if that trade happens, there are 4 HEX coins in the pool and 6 USDC coins in the pool. And if price is derived as a ratio of what's in the pool, the value or the price of the HEX token has gone up. Well, that's great for the people who are holding the token. But if you look at the person who's providing liquidity, they're left with 4 HEX tokens and 6 USDC tokens. Now, the USDC one is worth $1, but the HEX token has gone up. So they own less of the thing that has gone up in value. And the reason why they do that is because people take away the thing that has more value, or by taking it away, they're increasing the price of it and putting in the thing that's going down in price. And that's how the price is actually made, by that exact interaction right there. So that's exactly what impermanent loss is. It's you accumulating more of the token that is going down in price and giving away the token that's going up in price. because your coins that are provided in the liquidity pool are dictating the price itself. And so in a situation like you were saying with the rug, or a rugging situation, what they would do is they'll maybe put a liquidity pool that has a high APY to get people to provide like some coin in ETH with it. They'll have a bunch of the tokens. They'll dump all of the tokens, remove the Ethereum from the pool. Then the founders or the owners of that contract keep all the Ethereum, and everybody that's left with their LP tokens only has this useless token that has no value because it's not backed by any Ethereum because the people took it. So that's an extreme example of a permanent loss where you're left with nothing and the scammers are left with all the value.
Yeah, and so then in terms of like which ones you'd want to provide for, where's the most opportunity and the least amount of risk, you're talking about like the Pulse to PulseX pair. Because they both launched at the same time, they have roughly the same supplies, and they will likely move up and down together relative to the dollar because they're so tightly interwoven with that $127 million of liquidity between them. So that's where you're going to get, like, yeah, the APR might be lower, but if you just leave Pulse and PulseX in there for an extended period of time, then you're actually going to make out pretty well in terms of the ink that you earn, especially if you're putting in size, right? And then the risk that you have there first isn't as high as if you did it against a stable coin, because in the world where you're pairing it against a stable coin, the price going, let's say like you're going to do DAI versus Ethereum, DAI versus Pulse. When Pulse is going up in value, you're effectively selling your Pulse at higher and higher prices as it goes up. But at some point you just don't have much Pulse left, and now you have a bunch of stable coins, but the coins that you initially had might be worth a lot more now. But then if you let it, so this is where time plays a role in this. So if you're going to let time pass and the price starts to recede back down into your range where you started the position, and all of a sudden you have the same amount of Pulse that you did when you went in, and you have the less of the stable coin that you had, right? Because you saw the stable coin balance go up and the Pulse go down as the price rose, and then it goes back the other way as the price comes down. You lose the stable coins and you get more of the Pulse back. And then you're sitting on all of the ink token that you had during that time period. In addition to, which is what this is supposed to be like, you'd have fees accrued as well, which is like the cherry on top. And we're waiting for that fix so that there is a huge incentive there, right? Yeah. So that's a kind of a good way to look at it. There's a lot more risk in providing in stablecoin pairs and not so much risk in providing crypto to crypto pairs. Now, it's been the crypto that's been around for a lot longer, like Ethereum, that has a higher price, that's already done an amazing run and created floors. That's going to kind of act more like a stable coin, where if like Pulse goes up 1000x versus Ethereum, you're going to have a lot more Ethereum, but Ethereum's not going to move as good as, say, Pulse, because it's more or less liquid and moves faster.
So what about the ones that, so we have the farms, they're incentivized, and they're different than the pools. Is that more of like a blessing? Like these are the pairs, these are the coins that, whoever's providing the governance, like is it kind of, should we consider them rug proof, or like just more confidence in having them? Even WBTC, I mean, this is bridged over from Ethereum. So it's what are the risks with this pair, for example, even though it's high APR, why aren't more people participating in it?
I think Crispy, man.
Yeah, Crispy, you take this one, man.
Well, perhaps they don't have wrapped Bitcoin. That might be the first thing, right? That's the first thing.
I have an exchange they can use to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, if you had watched it come up, it came up from zero, right? The LP, and it's up to 16, 17 million. So I imagine that there's a goal to have a certain amount of liquidity across different pairs between the chains. And of course, I'm a complete degenerate. As soon as I saw that it went up the first time and it flashed, I did go buy some wrapped BTC. So I have a little bit in that pool. Because I just wanted exposure to that as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that what this is I don't want to call it vampire deck, but what it is giving somebody the opportunity to take wrapped Bitcoin off of ETH and put it into Pulse. It kind of goes to the point that Axis is talking about. There's an awful lot of value over there on the Ethereum chain that is mobile and can come to PulseChain and can be staked there, and then people can earn a pretty good rate. And Richard covered that in one of his tweets. You know, I mean, I don't know what the percentage ends up being because it's a sliding scale, but for a day, even for a day, you know, to get 600%, break that down by 365 is a pretty good deal compared to what you get on the ETH side for just holding. You're just holding, right?
So if there's not a rug possibility on that one because it's not this new coin that somebody just created and they can dump it all, is actually WBTC from Ethereum, unless I'm missing something there. And the risk there is impermanent loss, where you just end up. So how does that work? So PulseChain moons, and then you end up with a bunch of wrapped Bitcoin. Like, what are the
potentially?
risks there?
Yeah, you could end up with less pulse. I mean, this is one of the reasons why you wouldn't like I don't give financial advice anyways, right? But if thinking about it, if I only had a single bag of pulse, I'm not going to put it into LP, the whole thing to LP. I didn't do that. I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I really don't understand everything that could happen, all the things I don't know about. But am I willing to take a small percentage? Yeah, I'd put a small percentage in there. What's the worst that would happen? I will end up with more wrapped Bitcoin that won't go up as fast in the bull. In my perception, what's going to happen won't go up as fast and won't go as high. You know, I won't get as many X's. But there's an ulterior motive also to participating in some of this, and maybe not everybody thinks this way, but providing liquidity is a very important part of the economy. There's no, you know, I don't know how you have a market without makers, right? So somebody's got to make markets, and it's all part of it. So some people participate, I believe, just because they want to support. It's not always just about the fees. I mean, it's going to be about the fees at some point, but.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just think it's such a lot of people, again, they're sitting on the sidelines because the impermanent loss, the just the unfamiliarity with the interface. You know, you do have to click a lot of buttons. It is like, wow, can I just click one button and the contract just does all the stuff? But you got to get the coins, you got to supply them, you got to, you know, add them to the pool, and then, but after that, it's, you know, you're just basically like, hey, harvest when you want and do all that stuff.
Well, I think with the farming's one thing, right? Because if something made it to the farm, I'm pretty certain the pair is a good pair. But when you step outside of the farm, right? Because the, you know, the devs aren't going to list something up there that's a bad thing. I think I'll still double check everything. But when you step outside of the farms, you know, you have to be a little careful, right? It takes a little bit of research. You know, you make sure you have the right coin addresses. You know, to make sure you're looking at the right liquidity pool. That was what Sloth was talking about. I mean, if you end up with one of the scam coins, you could accidentally go into something and lose your marbles, right? So there's all that. And then there's whole nother thing is I don't know how many other people did it, but quite a few of us did bring ERC20s over. So I brought ERC20s over, and I did put them into LP. And that's gonna create some wicked changes too. I just thought about this. Oh man, let me think about this for a minute. So, anyways, they were kind of a write-off in my head. You know, I bought X amount, you know, 2 years ago that I wanted to bring over. Why did I want to bring it over? I wanted to bring liquidity over. Wanted to bring value over to the chain. Probably not going to do very well with them, particularly if I'm pairing them up with the PRC20s, right? And that's kind of been what I think has been happening. But what just occurred to me is we're going to have another event. This is going to be cool. So like you take that any of these pools that aren't earning LP, right? We're going to create a new pool. I should not use the word pool. Let me take a step back. There are going to be new LP, maybe it is pool, but liquidity pools, right? As opposed to PulseX pools. Those are going to be torn down. That means somebody has to start the first LP for each one of these again, which makes me wonder because it took me a good 45 minutes to decide what ratios I wanted to set them at when I started pools.
Wait, Chris, are you saying all this stuff that's been happening, all these little hiccups, all these imperfections, there actually are some opportunities?
There are definitely some opportunities.
Is that what you're saying? I just wanted to make that check on
that.
So
if you follow my thought here, if somebody is going to set up another pair, liquidity pair, and it's the Hedron PLS pair, somebody's got to set the first ratio. and they have to put some money into it to make it happen, right? And that kind of sets the tone for a little while.
You could be getting in before a lot of other people do, which means, you know, bigger percentage of the pool, more fees earned. But by the time the volume kicks back up, it's just it's a bunch of imaginary horribles. Honestly, it's really tragic.
That was satire. I detected satire. Wait a minute.
Yes, it was. Sorry, I'm still a little salty.
Sometimes you're funny.
I'm not crispy right now. I'm a little salty.
Crispy
I don't
and
know.
salty goes together.
I usually am not affected by the dumbass comments, but every once in a while, I'm just like, guys, do not look farther than you've ever looked before. Reach into yourself. Zoom out, everyone. Zoom out.
Bro, I'm
in this
zoomed
chat,
and I can see the whole chart, bro. It's down 99%.
It's so bad, Axis. It's so bad. Why are you zooming out that far? Why?
Yeah, don't zoom out.
Would you do that?
Not that far. This last zoom out.
I need the meme where it's like you zooming out and it's like you start to cry and then you get happy. You start to cry, you get happy.
Yeah.
It's amazing. No, I mean,
It's like,
great.
don't zoom out too far. You might find out the Earth's flat.
What?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Clearly.
Do you have an announcement to make, Axis? Do you want to
No, I
start
don't.
a movement?
I'm definitely no. I got enough movements going. Matter of fact, I'll be right back. I gotta hit the toilet.
Oh God, that kind of movement. One other thing I want to cover on the farms and stuff too is so again, maybe people just don't have a lot of money. Maybe they just have like $1,000, $2,000 and they're not incentivized to, you know, get a bigger percentage. They just can't get a bigger percentage of the pool or earn ink or things like that. Are there other reasons like how can people actually wreck themselves? Like what are some things? I'm just looking at some of these pools, looking at even the INC stuff. What are some scenarios? Like we can do this like inversion, right? Like let's talk about the things that could possibly wreck you, and then don't do those things, like inversion technique. Like go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I said, well, if you talk about the farms, number one thing I'm concerned with is, and so you said invert. What's going to happen with the price of the ink? Why would I spend my time being in a pool to earn ink if that's the only reason I went in, right? If the price of ink's not going to hold up, that would be a negative question for me. You know, that would be one way I'd be like, I don't want to do that.
So it'd be so you could get wrecked by thinking INC is going to, you know, stay strong or go up more, and you're gonna, you know, you may be disappointed whether that happens or not. Okay.
Right, because as Sloth said, you know, when you go into an LP, you're rewarded, and the whole purpose of the incentive is to reduce the risk, right?
Yeah, and that's actually, I want to ask about that. Let's finish this, but I want to talk about INC because I was finishing Sloth's stream this morning that he did yesterday, and he had some very interesting opinions about INC that I wanted to ask about too. I'm sure you gents do too. But just, is there any other things that people should just stay away from here? I mean, or you're personally staying away from?
I'm not doing so right now. The pools I'm in are just ink wrapped PLS, ink and PLSX. Yeah, ink and PulseX. That's what I'm in. I typically stay away from the stablecoin ones. I wouldn't be that opposed to a wrapped BTC or wrapped ETH one, just because, and this is actually only when the fees start to pick up again and we're actually getting paid in them. But if you think of any large players where they're going to be bringing their money in to try to onboard, let's try to obtain like Pulse and PulseX and stuff, it'll probably be through ETH and BTC because they're the most liquid. They're the most liquid coins that exist. So that's a potential, like, you know, play right there if you wanted to accept some impermanent loss that way, the risk of impermanent loss that way. Also, if you're looking to sell out of your coins, so it's different for V3 because you can set the exact range you want to buy or sell at. With V2, you have to time it a little bit more of when you place it in or when you remove it. So if you were looking like, hey, on like 10% of my bag, I was definitely looking to take profits on, it actually wouldn't be a bad idea to put that in now and just earn the fees until it gets to the price that you want to sell. You've sold out of some of it, earn fees, remove it, and then sell whatever's left. Like that's also a strategy.
That's so on the ratios too. Do you need to be careful on, you know, if Pulse and PulseX are at 1 to 2.5 or they're at 1 to 5, and you start providing liquidity, Are there
Mhm.
strategies to like figure out, hey, you know, I'm okay with this ratio, but this ratio is, are there more risky ratios to start adding LP positions?
Yeah, ratios that are more divergent from the mean. So if you imagine like there's a line that's best fit across all the data points in a certain chart, right? The further you are away from that line, the higher risk there is for impermanent loss, because chances are the chart will revert closer to the mean the further away it is. It's like, yeah, what's that? It's like, yeah, there's like some law like returning to the means or something like that, where it's like if you're a genius in something, the chances are your child won't be as smart because you're so far away from the average. The chances of you being closer to the average is higher. So it's like the closer you are to like whatever ratio the two coins are trading at long term, the better. Because even if the impermanent loss goes away, the ratio goes away where you experience a permanent loss, chances are it'll come back. Now, these are mostly for pair-to-pair coins, and this doesn't take into account if a single coin continuously outperforms another over time. So, for example, that's why a stable coin thing would be like max and permanent loss, because like the dollar is crap, and we're all trying to outperform the dollar, and so presumably all the charts that we're in should be going up and to the right against the dollar. But something like PulseX and Pulse, well, that might be able to find a ratio somewhere on average between just hypothetically 1 to 3, but maybe it's 1 to 1 at some point. Maybe it's 1 to 5 at some point. But if the mean is like 1 to 3, that's kind of where you want to place it. Because if you place it anywhere else, then when it goes back to the mean or in the other way, you're like way out of you're really experiencing permanent loss, and there's really not much weighting you can do to get back to the original ratio that you had.
So an odd ratio will amplify impermanent loss.
Yeah. A ratio that is less likely to exist in the future will have more impermanent loss. A ratio that's more likely to exist in the future has less impermanent loss. Generally speaking, like that's just like a rule of thumb.
Gotcha. That's a good one too. From A-Bit. Records have to go out of LP position, not monitor. So how often do you need to, on B2, PulseX, how often do you need to monitor position, and what would be signals that it would be advantageous to pull it versus, not do anything?
When you guys want to take that?
Yeah, I was reading chat. Sorry.
I talked to that too. So there are really two ways of going about the LPing strategy. One is passive income. So it's a certain percentage of your portfolio within two coins that you really don't care if you own more of one than the other. The PulseX pool is a really good example of that, where it's like with 10% of my bag, do I care if I'm heavier in PulseX or heavier in PulseChain? Another way of saying that is with 10% of my bag, do I care that I'm only getting the returns of the coin that does the worst? That does the least, has the least amount of gains. So if PulseX has the least amount of gains, I'm more likely to get those lower gains than the higher gains of Pulse, and vice versa. If you're okay with that and you want to earn a little bit of passive income on that percentage of your portfolio, then setting, forgetting, and harvesting / compounding / selling, whatever you choose to do, is the best, is a good option. Mm-hmm. The other form of LPing is basically chasing the fees, where you're really trying to make it so that the fees that you're earning vastly outweigh any impermanent loss you experience, so that you're making profit. This is more of a position that you have to actively monitor to make sure that you are staying in the money for longer, and you're not experiencing any extra any extra impermanent loss that would make it so net you've actually lost money.
Gotcha.
Can I add one other thing to that?
Sure.
So, another thing that occurred to me is you do hear people say, "Don't LP stables, don't," and 100%, right? That's like if you're trying to earn fees and stay in the game, perhaps you would never want to do that. But in the future, that could be quite useful to you, just like we've always said with V3 liquidity, single-sided liquidity, and when you're trying to get out, you're expecting the price to move upwards, and you're able to sell out. The DAI, the USDC, USDT, they've all been doing very well with the ink. And so what what is the worst case at the moment if I was in there with those, and I am in there with them, is that I'll end up completely in stables, right? I mean, and that will never happen, but I mean, that would be the worst case, right? 99% in stablecoin. And so I would have lost opportunity cost. But again, it's all a matter of perspective, I think.
I want to ask too, is there a way to make passive income doing this type of stuff if you have enough capital to put in? And of course, you weigh the risks and decide on the pairs. For example, with the the least risky, it sounds like the consensus is the least risky pair that has a reward and sustainable over the long term appears to be the PulseX and Pulse pair. 50K USD over 30 days gives somebody $1,700. If you have enough capital, can you just make passive income off this stuff?
Mm-hmm. I would say that, yeah, but your general person might only have like, let's say $1,000 to put in. And so the way that you look at this equation then is you put in 1,000 now, but the price appreciation after 1,000x and if in the holding of the rewards is where you actually win. So you provide the LP, maybe it's only $1,000 or $2,000. And it looks like it's only $35 a day, but on 1,000x, now that was $3,500 a day. Or I'm sorry, $3,500 every 30 days. But you're going to have to hold those rewards and keep your position in for the long term and not be like adjusting them and things like that. And everyone needs to have a more forward-thinking mindset. And once Bitcoin and Ethereum really start moving in the next bull run, that the PulseChain ecosystem is going to benefit for it. Because to be honest, right now it can't stand on its own as it stands. There's no way to bring money in unless through the bridge from Ethereum, and at the same time you have people chastising Ethereum. So it's kind of a point of contention right now. So we need either A, have fiat on ramps that you can bring money directly into the Pulse chain, and or let Ethereum and Bitcoin do their thing, and then this ecosystem can benefit from that.
And what if you were trying to do make up for a monthly salary or 2 weeks or whatever? Again, is it something that if you have a lot of maybe you sacked a lot for PulseX because you want to pulse or you want to make other plays in the ecosystem, what would you actually need to do? Like how I guess I don't know, I'm just playing with the numbers here, but what would you actually need to have? And factoring in the ink price, I mean it's been going down lately, but it had a huge run up. And then the appreciation of the coins within the pair. But if you were just trying to, it's kind of like hex staking. You stake, and then when the stake ends, you do whatever with the yield, or you either roll it into it, or you do something else with it, you sell it, and then you re-stake your principal. Is there some principle you could use to do that as well if you had big enough hex stakes versus having big enough LP positions?
I mean, the thing that I want to say the most right here is that there's a big distinction between hex staking and all this other stuff. Like the LP stuff is more of like an active management thing where you take on certain amounts of risk. Potentially, you're juggling the price risk of 3 different assets. You're risking impermanent loss and not pulling the liquidity at the right time. Which, by the way, if you were actually getting paid LP fees, that would buffer some of that risk, right? But you're not. So then you're totally reliant on the ink token to perform. And if it's not performing and it falls in price by 85 to 95%, you would have been better off just sitting on the sideline in cash and buying the bottom on ink, riding that wave next up the next time, or leaving a position in for the really long term and earning ink at a slower rate. So when you really consider everything, I think the big thing that's going over people's head right now is that hex staking long and fat, or even just long and over, let's say 10,000 hex per stake on the Pulse chain might be the least amount of risk for the highest amount of reward over the long term. Yep. I'm not trying to shit on LP. LP is more it's a very good skill to have, and everyone's going to want to know this skill going into the bull run. Because as the dollar prices of these things go up, if you play the LP game properly, you can actually compound returns and do better than hex staking potentially. But there's just a lot more active management and a lot more risk that goes into LPs.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely here on the hex staking, I'm just trying to look at the horizon, because before, you could do LP with hex on Uniswap. V2 or V3, but now we have PulseX and they have these farms and they have incentive tokens. So it's giving people more more ways to do it, and that's what I think people are struggling with too. Is like, where do I put my money?
Yeah.
Where do I put my pulse? Where do I put my hex? All that stuff.
Well, here's the thing for you to throw out. You know, these farms don't last forever, right? They can go away at any time. New ones can be created, and you know, the rate changes all the time. They can go up and it can go down. So from a passive income perspective, like you're trying to obtain financial freedom, this is not the place I would go to first. This is my opinion. I would not go to farming first. I would go to hex first, and I would figure out how I would want my ladders there, and my strategy would be to build up my immutable, non-actively having to manage, you know, income stream to be able to do what I want to do. Then I would look at other things, you know, which might include LP or even as far as farming.